We have this global phenomenon of massive interest in AI, massive investment into AI. And that is going to fundamentally change currency, cost, markets, valuations.
These are all just tools. What's more important is what you can do with the tool to service your customer, to engage with your customer.
One of the most interesting lines that they have said probably in the past day and a half is like, you are listening to the AI with Maribel Lopez podcast, or AI with ML. If this is your first time listening, thank you for joining. The AI with Maribel Lopez podcast is brought to you by the Data for Betterment Foundation. This podcast shares the stories of the people behind the new world of data and AI. What are they creating? And why does it matter? If you like this episode, please subscribe so you can easily find the podcast again. You can find the video version of this podcast at youtube.com at AI with Maribel Lopez. You can also share your feedback and ideas with me on X, also known as Twitter, and LinkedIn. All links are in the show notes. Extended show notes, episodes, and transcripts can be found at lopezresearch.com/podcast. I hope you'll enjoy the show.
Hi, Tim Crawford with Avoa here, and I am joined by two colleagues. And we're going to talk about our top takeaways from Zoho Day here at Horseshoe Bay Resort in Texas. So, Maribel, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Maribel Lopez, founder of Lopez Research.
Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research.
Great.
Also known as Troublemakers.
Also known as Troublemaker. We're the Troublemaker Trio. Is that our new title?
Troublemaker
the Troublemaker Trio.
I love it. Okay, here we go.
Well, we can't disclose like what our real name is.
No,
that's true. That's true.
That is
on
not
QT.
fit. No.
Okay.
All right, so back to the series.
Yeah, back to yes.
Yes.
Rope it back in.
Yeah.
So, key takeaways.
So for me, Zoho has a big focus on the enterprise. They're moving into creating a platform and then using the data in that platform with a layer of AI to give more business intelligence at large. That was sort of the story and the vision. There were lots of different piece parts, but if I had to say my key takeaways, moving more aggressively in the enterprise, making sure it stands up all the things it needs to do for that, more than one product, multiple products coming together with a foundation of AI and privacy on top.
And when you talk about platform, they've long since had a platform.
Absolutely.
50 some odd applications in there. What's new that you're seeing from that platform that customers might be interested in resonating with?
I think that having an application in of itself or multiple applications in themselves does not create a platform, right? What creates a platform is the concept of the tooling that's around it, the intelligence of the integration, the ability to integrate with all the stuff you already have.
The third party
applications.
application.
A platform island is not what we're going for. A CRM 270 instead of a 360 is not what we're going for here. We need to connect all the data and put the AI around that data. One of the most interesting lines that they had said probably in the past day and a half is like, if you asked our customers if they're using AI, they may say no, but in fact, we look at our numbers and they're using AI. They don't even know they're using it.
Right.
So that, that's actually part of platforming as well, having a set of features and tooling that people don't even understand that they're using, but things are just working in such a way that it just makes sense.
Let's come back to the AI.
Well,
Go.
Yes, I want to come back to the AI, but I think it's also a culmination of where their vision of a Zoho-defined platform would be.
Yes.
I think if we roll back the tape to say 5 years ago, even 2020 Zoho Day in Austin, right? What we heard a lot about was the starting point of being able to offer a true platform because of the architecture that they were beginning to flesh out in their data centers and in their data center strategy, right? And in truly the foundation of where Zoho was not only going to prop up all of their tools, make all of these tools available, but then also that starting point of where those shared services, whether they were going to be a data layer, whether it was going to be application layers, bringing that true definition of composability into their definition of infrastructure really started 5 years ago. But it was very much a hardware, like data-centric
Very
vision.
tech-centric vision, right?
Yeah, but it was, I would actually say not even just a tech-centric vision. Like I would take that a step like more rudimentary. It was literally a data center architecture structure. We are, private cloud, this is where we're going, this is where we define privacy. And I think we've seen that grow and evolve over the years into a way that makes it very purpose-built for organizations that want to be very, very aware of the architecture, the composability, the privacy and security aspect of this, whether it is from tracking, whether it's from data security and storage, whether it's from observability. We've seen this now evolve, so they really have been in this kind of ideal place, I would say really for the mid-market, if I'm being honest, right?
Right.
For the mid-market to exploit what a lot of other CRM or platform vendors would not be able to offer these organizations, which is this really well thought out, true platform on which you can build all of these tools and in which you can deliver all of these applications. I think this was the year, and I think my big takeaway from this is, are they today kicking down the doors of all the enterprises to really offer this enterprise solution? Maybe not.
Yeah.
If we're being fair, I think they're far more ready today than they were 5 years ago when they were starting to talk about enterprise and they were starting to talk about matching that enterprise architecture. I think that what they have built and how they very intentionally built it has come from the right place and is now ready to do exactly what we were talking about, right? Bringing all that data into one place. The fact that they didn't lead with what a lot of other players would have done, which is we're a CRM, we have all of this transactional data, now we can bring in all of this customer data, now we're a CDP. Like they didn't go down that path of trying to pretend
which
to be
we've heard before.
We've heard before. And,
Right.
and the problem is you lose the fidelity of the data when you do that. Right?
Exactly.
Going from one stage to the next to the next. And that's not Zoho. Zoho has been about bringing the data together, which now it's not just the technology and the platform, but it's also where the customer is and what the customer is looking for. And that fidelity, and in some regards, the integration or lack thereof is a good thing where you don't have to weave together multiple pieces and lose that data fidelity in terms of who's Liz Miller and who's Tim Crawford and who's Maribel Lopez, and let's make sure they're all the same person to the different departments. And so I think that that's really true. But as you start to think about how people work within the organization, and the worker is getting more sophisticated in how they think about a customer, how they engage with a customer. It's not just, I'm just looking for a customer in terms of the sales transaction or for a marketing campaign, or to support them. It's all of it together. I need a more holistic view. And historically, what the CIO has to do, if we're talking about enterprises, I have to figure out how to weave those products together and make it work.
MacGyver, duct tape, and sticky glue. It's like my favorite analogy, but it still works. If you're old enough to remember MacGyver, or even the MacGyver reboot, you know what I'm talking about.
And if you don't know, look it up.
It's called the Google machine, kids.
Grab it. It's like I got a cell phone, a paper clip, and some duct tape. What can we do?
Yes, but I think the other piece that gets really important to this conversation is when you start to understand the customer more holistically. These are still just tools. At the end of the day, these are all just tools. What's more important is what you can do with the tool to service your customer, to engage with your customer. Something that a CIO once told me is, look, we looked at our platforms, we looked at our applications, and while we think we have 360-degree view of the customer, we only have about 180 degrees of data.
But let's also be really honest about something.
How do you start to bring it together?
This myth of the customer 360 is probably it's like the bane of my existence. And even when I was a CMO, it used to drive me crazy. And people were like, I need a 360-degree view of the customer. Not even an owl turns its head 360 degrees. Like you don't have to, but
The Exorcist woman does,
But
though.
the thing that you're both saying that gets misinterpreted when we talk about a customer 360 is it's not that I need to know everything about my customer. I need to know everything about the data that exists around and about my customer that is across my organization. And that's what you're talking about when you're talking about data fidelity. And that's what you're talking about in being able to bring all these applications together. Zoho has refined its conversation to understand that. I would argue that other vendors out there are still chasing this weird, elusive, I know everything about you, and now I can talk to you in weird places. Like, don't do that.
And for the most part, we still have a bunch of islands, right? Because any customer you go into is not going to have every single product from a single vendor, right? So we've got island A needs to talk to island B, and sometimes there's still disconnects between those islands. The one surprising thing for me, which probably isn't surprising for either of you, but we spend a lot of time talking to a lot of companies that are US based in this space, right? And the level of international fidelity of how different customers in different regions of the world approach, this whole concept differently. They have different regulatory requirements, a wide variety of budgetary requirements, different partnering requirements,
different cultures,
different different cultures of what they consider an experience, as an example. So the thing I think is interesting about that is while this might be happening with other companies, we don't spend as much time talking about it. Like, what's the difference between being in Brazil versus being in India versus being in one of the many European countries? And I thought they did a really good representation of that during this event. Probably the best global representation of how customers adopt my problem that I've seen in a while.
That's actually a really good point. And I think, it's not just about localization.
Correct.
It's really about understanding the people of that region or that country. And Zoho clearly is one that understands that. Probably, if not the best, one of the best in the market today.
I've got to point to one comment that the Jay Sundaram said in a panel on day 2 this morning. And it was, it's great, you have the executive team up there and yes, it's great. We have offices in all these areas. We believe in transnational localism. Awesome. It's very consistent with Zoho. We want to have people who are within that culture being in those offices. We want people who understand the region, the city, the companies, the complexities of this region. But then he said the one thing that really no one wants to talk about, which is we price it in their currency.
Right.
Because I have yet to hear a vendor who is not a local niche vendor, who isn't a distributor, a local distributor, or a proxy of a larger vendor say, we're willing to take the risk of the volatility of global currency. And we will offer our pricing in the local currency so that it makes sense for that company to actually invest and become a partner with Zoho, because there is that understanding of hey, things change. Markets are going to go wild and wacky, and we don't quite know it. And I think that's especially important today in 2025, as we start to look out over the next year to 2 years, when global markets are going to be dramatically impacted by the financial aspects of investing in AI. We have this global phenomenon of massive interest in AI, massive investment into AI. And that is going to fundamentally change currency, cost, markets, valuations. So for Zoho to be out there to say, we're not going to force you to use AI. In fact, you don't even have to tell us if you use it, right? We know, right?
Well,
we know what's on the back end, right?
That customers want to use AI, but they're not sure what to do with it.
And I think it's they want to talk about the buzzword, and that's what I love what Raju said, right? Raju very clearly was like, our customers want to talk to us about AI as this buzzword. What projects can we do? But until we bring the use case that talks about the value and not the technology, they don't see where they can actually implement it so that the investment makes sense.
Right.
And so this is a 2024, 2025 thing, because before that, beginning of 24, everybody was like, oh, what can we do with AI? And it was all like, wild scientific weirdness, and it wasn't tied to business value. And now I think we've moved to this really healthy place where it's like, sure, I'm committed to AI because, maybe my board told me I had to be committed to AI. However they got there. They got there. But now they're saying, well, what can I really do with it?
Yeah.
And I think, we went from first we were talking about chips, then we were talking about models, now we're talking about AI and applications. And, God, actually we're talking about agents and agentic AI, to be clear on what the agent part is, agentic and platforms. But I think we'll get to a point where it's just like air. It just falls into it. Like, at one point we won't be having this conversation anymore.
You're not going to be a digital it's the difference between being a digital enterprise or doing digital things.
Yes.
And there's a massive difference in that. And the implication of being an AI enterprise, being open to that versus doing AI has a huge impact on CIOs.
It does. And so kind of dovetailing on that, when you think about the enterprise, and as Zoho starts to step into that enterprise space, granted they've been working on it for a few years now. It's not a 2024, 2025 thing. They've been working on it. But they're trying to figure out what's the right playbook to be able to engage with them, because when you're using that global approach and really understanding the local culture and how to engage with those people in those countries, it's very different. The enterprise is a totally different playbook, as you both know. And so I do think Zoho is still trying to figure that out as to what that playbook looks like.
Yeah.
It's a totally new space for them. But when you start bringing in things like AI, and you start talking about customer fidelity, and you start talking about data and regulatory and compliance, all of the things that you mentioned earlier that are built into the guts of Zoho and the platform, those will play well for Zoho. It's just a matter of how do they execute on the engagement through the partner programs and also through the different ways that they engage with customers and nurture those relationships too.
There's going to be something, though, that I think is worth pointing out that the market is not going to like, and that analysts are not going to like, as analysts. And we haven't liked it for a very long time, which is the unexplainability of Zoho's culture of we're doing it the Zoho way. Having been at multiple of these analyst events, and shout out to Sandy Lowe for making this so accessible and making the access to executives so accessible. When you spend time with the people at Zoho, this is not I'm been here for 1 year, or I'm dropping in to get my stock valuation and then I'm going to be out. Like, that is not the Zoho culture. It really is a culture where someone could wake up in the morning and say, my customer keeps talking to me about this problem. I think we should go create a tool to go solve that problem. And they then can go and talk to someone and be like, I want to do this. And they go, great, go have a team. Like, it's a very, very different culture. And it sounds wacky when you start to talk about it. But year over year, I come to this event and the same thing happens. Someone stands up and says, you can't do it this way, Zoho. If you want to get to $20 billion, if you want to be a global company, if you want to sell to the enterprise, you, Zoho, can't do it the way you want to do it. And year over year, the very next year, they prove that not only can they did. Right? And it defies most analyst convention, and it infuriates some of the analysts, especially financial analysts, right? Because they're like, you shouldn't make sense. You shouldn't be successful. You guys go and do all this crazy things. You have a hospital, you have medical devices, you have cars. You shouldn't be able to sell to the enterprise. And so the thing that I walk away from this Zoho Day thinking is kind of remembering in the back of my mind just how many people have stood up and said to Vijay, right, who's their chief strategy officer, you won't be able to reach X billion dollars unless you change your strategy. And him standing up in front of everybody being like, well, we'll see. Because we like doing it the Zoho way. And I think that for the enterprise, not every enterprise customer is the right Zoho customer. And the difference is, unlike a HubSpot, unlike a Salesforce, unlike Microsoft, and this is not to bash any of them, right? They're great. Where their corporate kind of mindset is, well, why aren't those customers right for us? And what can we offer them to make us right for them? And they change the product or they change a package so that they are right for every enterprise. Zoho's the one that says, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
We're not right for every enterprise, but you know what? We're gonna be right for a lot of different enterprises. And here are the use cases that we can show and influence.
And I think a lot of that culture, and I agree with you, Zoho is a special company.
Yeah.
It's a very special company. I think we all would agree with that. It is not your typical corporate entity. And I think one of the things that allows it to be special is the culture of the executive team and what they've instilled within the organization, but also that they're still privately held.
Yes.
So it gives them.
They can do what they want to do when they want to do
to
it.
the shareholder and the rest,
Absolutely.
right?
They can run a long game business.
That's
and
right.
I think that's actually the big difference, because if you have a long game vision and you don't have to meet like this quarterly beat, beat and raise every quarter, creates really odd dynamics within a business. But I really like where you were going with it, Liz, because I think you picked up on something that's so important that we don't think about oftentimes as organizations. I've been thinking about it in the analyst world. I've been thinking about it for our customers. And that's the concept of you've really got to pick the thing that's right for you and your organization. And not everything is right for you and your organization. And not every company has to fit into, it's not like we got a round peg and a square hole and we're going to try to like put it in there, whatever's going on, right? So, but I think this is different thinking because it really requires you as a buyer and you as a vendor to be very thoughtful about what is your thing? Like, what is the thing you own? What is the market you own? What are the characteristics of the thing you want to own, right?
That's so true. But I think one of the challenges there is you can use that playbook from a Zoho perspective, but you cannot ignore that customers aren't there yet. They are not expecting that.
Yeah.
And so to expect them to change, to adapt to looking at this more holistic view, especially for enterprise customers that are moving in a certain direction with a certain cadence and a certain type of engagement, that's unfortunately not going to mesh well. And so there has to be some connective tissue built between those two, which is going to require some changes on Zoho's part and some evolution on the enterprise's part. I think at the end of the day, that's all goodness. But it's going to take some change. You can't use the same playbook.
Yeah.
All right, so as we kind of wrap, what's kind of your core takeaway?
Oh gosh, my core takeaway is all of the recent news around reshuffling the personnel deck at the top of the Zoho ship really signals to me a very clear intent to keep innovation at the forefront of how they are building out these new tools. Sridhar Vembu becoming the chief scientist, getting back to that happy place of his, of getting to tinker and build and poke the AI bear and look at that, really is a very strong signal to me that Zoho is getting very, very serious about what its next chapter in technology and innovation is.
And I had a one-on-one discussion with him, which will be posted, and we touch on that very issue, so stay tuned.
So for me, having gone to a lot of events recently that we all have, it was nice to not have the entire event be AI. There's nothing else but AI. So that was really nice because you got the sense that AI was infused, but AI wasn't the only thing that we were talking about. The other thing I think that was really powerful that we didn't talk a lot about was just from that viewpoint that you were saying, this concept of how will enterprise software change? Where's the value going to be delivered? We've talked a lot about people's secret sauce being their data. Like that's something we've talked a lot about. But there will be a massive change in enterprise software, and it'll be driven by a change in how we're thinking about AI agents and what they can and can't do, how we think about API structures, how we think about the next iteration of microservices that are AI driven. So there's a lot that's going to go on there. That's a whole separate podcast in of itself. We'll get back to you later on
You're
that.
definitely going to get the boot from this
Tim,
room if we try to go down that route.
Very cool. Maribel Lopez, Liz Miller, I'm Tim Crawford. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode coming soon.
Thank you for listening. Additional content can be found at lopezresearch.com/podcasts. Until next time, wishing you all the best.